And that man is joining us now. His name is Sharay Hayes, an exotic dancer who goes by the stage name of The Punisher, recently testified in the case. He's also the author of In Search of Freezer Meat. I don't know if I want to get into the details of the title of the book, Sharay, but I appreciate it, and folks can check that out. I know it's selling very well these days. Let me ask you, Sharay, let's start first with the Punisher nickname. There's been a lot of talk about that. Can you just set the record straight as to where you got that nickname?
Yeah, the nickname is not associated with any sexual acts or that type of environment. It's actually a nickname from playing basketball in the New York City area. A place called The Cage. If you were a regular at the court, you earned a nickname. And that was something I was doing previous to dancing, so I kind of just carried it over to my dancing.
Perfect. My basketball nickname was Hitman, and it has nothing to do with what I do after I leave the studio. Okay, that's great. Let's start. How do you first get connected to Cassie and Diddy?
So at the time, I was just using Google for like leads for private parties, like bachelorette parties and birthday parties. So if you did a Google search for male dancers in the New York City area, you would find my website, and I was taking the calls directly. So it was just like a standard party booking where I just got a call. At the time, Miss Ventura introduced herself as Janet and said that it was her birthday, and her husband said that she can hire an entertainer. And I was under the impression that I was showing up for a small gathering of her girlfriends, and they wanted a little striptease to entertain her for her birthday.
Okay, so you show up. First of all, where do you show up, and what happens? Who greets you, and how do you begin the evening?
Yeah, so, the normal scenario with booking a party is you get a location and a time. So the location I was given was Trump International Hotel, which is Central Park West. And I was told the time kind of varied. We started maybe 12, 12:30. There was some rearranging the time, but we kind of set a concrete time stamp of 3 a.m. So I'm showing up expecting to just come to a gathering of women, normal party atmosphere I've done literally thousands of times. But in this occasion, I was greeted at the door by Miss Ventura in just a bathrobe, and it was clear indication that she was nude under. And I kind of knew from just the immediate initial walking into the door that this wasn't going to be like a typical birthday party.
Okay, so she opens the door by herself, robe, nothing underneath. So is there a conversation about what the evening is going to entail? Does she lay out what her expectations would be?
Yes. So coming in, I'm still, obviously, we walk in, it's a suite. So we walk into the living room area, and I can tell that there's no guests there. So, but I just asked the question anyway. We stopped in front of a bathroom, and I said, hey, do you want me to change here? And I'm talking about my outfit to dance. And she immediately explained to me, hey, look, I'm not interested in you dancing. And she explained to me that her and her husband like to create a sexy scene. So the furniture in the living room were all covered in sheets. In the proximity of the sofa and a chair, you can see that there were bowls of warm water with bottles of baby oil in it. And she explained that we were going to create this scene where I was going to put baby oil on myself. She was going to do the same. We may oil each other, and eventually her husband would come out and watch at some point. And I was specifically instructed that when her husband came out to not look at him, don't talk to him, try my best to not acknowledge him. We're supposed to act like he's not even present.
Now, did you recognize Cassie when you got there and you saw her?
I did not. Like, her face looked familiar, but I couldn't make it out. She was wearing a wig at the time, and my association with Cassie was she had this real prominent, like, shaved hairdo. So without that cue, I did not realize who she was.
Now, you realize that the people who hired you had some money, right? This was a nice place that you were at?
Yeah, so, doing parties over the years, you get an understanding of which hotels are very high end. So the minute that I heard Trump International, that was kind of a cue that this was going to be a high profile party.
Okay, so she's laying out that we're going to do this baby oil thing. Does she instruct you to take off your clothes? Does she take off her clothes? How how do you get to that next step? We're like, okay, we're going to do a scene, right? So how does it start? And and let me ask you one other thing. Are you concerned that there's going to be someone walking in and you don't know who or when this person is going to walk in to this room?
Yeah, so this scenario for me, it was very nuanced. It wasn't something typical. So I was instructed when I asked to change I had a choice of just coming out of my underwear or a towel. So I chose a towel. And as soon as I came out, it was just instructions that we were going to sit adjacent from each other and start this. Now, even being in this type of business for a long period of time, the idea of having, close proximity sexual situations with a partnered woman was something I wasn't experienced. So there was a scenario, just a thought process in the back of my mind, like, hey, is this going to be okay? Will the husband get jealous? Will this create a scenario of uncomfortability? So I was worried about that going into the situation.
So you sit down on the couches covered in sheets. At this point, who is doing what? And remember, we're on regular television. I know you understand that, but is there physical contact between you with the baby oil, and are you naked?
Yeah, so obviously she starts out in a robe, I start out in a towel, and it does escalate to us being nude. And so I'm putting the baby oil on myself individually. She's doing the same. At some point, we start doing it to each other in terms of like a mutual massage. And then there is mimicking of self-pleasuring, right? Because we're trying to create the scene. And it did feel like acting, right? It felt like, I always think about those kind of like grade B cable movies where they have the sexy scenes, and so it seemed like corny acting, right? But I'm in there trying to create the scene. Obviously, I was initially paid 4 times the amount I asked for. So in terms of me, I thought it was a workable scenario in terms of what I was being paid in the environment. So I was trying to make it work. So it didn't escalate to anything past that. But that's all the expectation that I understood at that time.
So you were play acting. Now, you say you're doing a scene. I'm wondering, are you looking around to see if there are cameras anywhere?
So the room was dark. Everything was they had these little electric candles, so that pretty much controlled the light. So my assumption of it was it was too dark to film, so I didn't probe to see if anything like that was going on. And then the truth of the matter, man, the situation was so overwhelming at that moment, walking into this expecting to do something I've done 1,000 times, which is a little striptease, and now I'm in this situation. My mind was over processing so many things that thinking about a camera was really the furthest thing from my mind.
And you said 4 times the usual amount. So how much are you being paid for this?
Well, so a striptease is $200, right? So when I walked in, prior to me changing, she handed me a stack of money, and at that time it was $800. I counted it in the bathroom. So again, knowing that amount of money, expecting $200, and I'm like, okay, all I have to do is rub oil on her and rub oil on myself. It seemed like a workable scenario. The situation of the husband eventually coming into the room, again, that created some concern. But the concern for me at that point was more of maybe him getting jealous of me interacting with his wife.
All right, we're going to take a short break, folks. When we come back, I'm going to ask Sharay about Diddy. When does Diddy enter the room? Does he recognize him? What happens next as we continue our coverage of the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs? Welcome back. We're in the middle of learning the intimate details of what was happening in one of Diddy's freak-offs with Cassie and a exotic dancer known as the Punisher, but his real name is Sharay Hayes, and he's with us right now. Sharay, thanks so much for sticking around. Okay, so when we left off, right, you were on the couch, naked, covered in baby oil, play acting with Cassie. At what point do you realize that her partner, husband, however she referred to him, enters the room?
I want to say it was about maybe somewhere between 7 to 10 minutes into the scene, and I could see from my peripheral vision a man walk into the room. And I obviously I have my own concerns, so I am paying attention to it. So I can clearly see that he enters the room. The room is set up where he's quite a distance. We're on one far side of the room on the couches, and then on the opposite side of the room there was a table and chair set up. So he walked in and he sat there, but coming in, I can pick up the fact that he was actually nude, and I could not see his face because he was wearing what I believe is called a hijab. It's what the Muslim women wear, where their faces are completely covered and you can only see their eyes. So he entered the room that way and sat at a table and chair on the far side of the room.
Now, during all of this, is there any conversation between you and Diddy or you and Cassie? And if so, what's the nature? Like, what is being said?
So the conversation with me and Cassie was, because as I entered the room, I only spoke to her. So like I said earlier, she explained to me what she wanted to create with the scene. And while we were in the acting mode, it wasn't really any conversation between me and her, other than us playing our roles. And as I was not supposed to acknowledge Mr. Combs, he didn't acknowledge and speak to me in any way. He would give subtle directions to Miss Ventura in regards to more of lighting situations. The room was candlelit, it was kind of dim, so he would give instructions in terms of move the candles a little bit more, position your body this way. Even if it was something for me to do, he would ask her to ask me, have him move to the left. So it was a very diligent, deliberate effort to avoid any interactions with me directly.
So this is the first time, right? And there are return engagements where you get involved again. How many times did they call you back to engage in this freak-off stuff?
Yeah, so I honestly don't have an exact number. So I've always estimated from 8 to 12 times. And this also went on over a period of 2.5 years. It was from the fall of 2012 to spring of 2015.
And in that first engagement, was there any sexual contact, sexual intercourse?
No, there wasn't. It stayed strictly just a scene/massage. At some point, maybe 20 to 25 minutes into the act, Mr. Combs got up and walked out of the room, and Miss Ventura followed him. She came back almost immediately and just said, "Hey, that was great. That was exactly what we were looking for. Thank you. We can be done now." But then, oddly, she offered me the option of, "Do you want to finish?" Which I understood meaning to orgasm, which I actually declined. I was already uncomfortable with the situation, and I really just tried to stay professional and said, "Look, it's not about my individual pleasure. I'm here to make this scene for you guys. If you're happy, I'm happy. So it's unnecessary." And she just said, "Thank you," and then handed me an additional stack of money, which ended up being another $1,200. So it was a $2,000.
$2,000. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's 8 to 10 more times, or 8 to 12 times over the course of 2.5 years. Did the nature of the scenes you were playing change?
Just a escalation to actual sex, but everything stayed very routine and standard. It was always a scenario where it started with baby oil massage, mutual, with some sort of act of self-pleasuring that then would escalate to sexual acts of oral or maybe penetrative sex.
And Diddy never partakes in it, right? He's taking care of himself?
Yeah, he never partakes. He's always, for the most part, a great distance away. And almost all of his interactions was just directions in terms of visual cues, body positioning, a suggestion of maybe more oil. And if there was further suggestions, I didn't hear them because there was a routine. If they needed to have a conversation, he would stand up at times and just walk out of the room. And Miss Ventura would take that as a cue, leave the room with him. They would have a brief conversation, be gone for a period of time, and then she would return and we would resume. And sometimes with her resuming, she would give me instructions or the act or something would change. But I don't know if that was directly from him or her. But I know all of their communications were outside of an environment for me to see or hear. So I can't give you the real structure or means of where the directions came from.
And at any point, did you get the feeling that what was taking place was non-consensual?
That I did not. I always felt like this was I honestly, in the moment, it just felt like this was a couple that were trying to explore certain kinks and fetishes. And I was just somebody there to try to provide the fantasy or help them create the fantasy. My interactions with Miss Ventura prior to the sessions was always very cordial and positive, and it was a good vibe and environment. And even after the fact, when she would come to initially pay me when the situation was over, everything seemed like she was in a good-natured, good headspace, and I didn't get any cues that there was possibly distress or some type of thing she was going through that might have been a negative experience.
All right, Sharay's going to stay with us. When we come back, I'm going to ask him, when does he find out that this is actually Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie Ventura? And what's his reaction to finding that out? Plus, coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates the sexual abuse and murder of 13-year-old Madeline Soto. Her accused abuser, her mom's boyfriend, Stephen Stearns, is about to go on trial. But where is Madeline's mother, Jen Soto? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Couldn't keep my life straight.
They were killed by their own children.
That challenged the legal system and ourselves. Court TV, Legendary Trials.
Welcome back. We're continuing our interview with one of the crucial witnesses in the case against Diddy Combs. His name is Sharay Hayes. He's an exotic dancer, also known as the Punisher. Testified in the trial, also has a book out called In Search of Freezer Meat, which has both humorous and has helpful information, especially for men, in that book, and it's selling very well. Let me ask you, Sharay, at what point, how and when did you realize that this couple was actually Diddy and Cassie Ventura?
Yeah, so embarrassingly, man, this whole situation went on a duration of, like I said earlier, 2.5 years. And it probably was about a year to 15 months in, and I still had no clue who they were. And just when I would meet up with them, we would be in these large hotel suites, and sometimes I could show up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then our actual interactions wouldn't go on to hours later. So one specific day, they put me in an extra room in the suite, and to kill time, I decided to watch TV. And this specific hotel had a welcome message. So when I cut the TV on, the screen said Essex House would like to welcome Mr. Sean Combs. And that was literally how I found out. I just cut on the TV, I saw his name, and when I tell you, it was just like a holy crap moment.
Yeah.
I was, and it was even more embarrassing was, at the time, I followed him on social media. So I would literally see him from time to time on my phone, do posts and stuff like that, and I had no idea that's who I was interacting with.
So when you find out, the behavior still continues. Does it change anything for you? Are you more concerned? Do you feel more comfortable? What's going through your mind?
Yeah, so for me, it actually created more anxiety. And, again, it's rumors, but, me growing up, there was always a rumor in terms of Mr. Combs' sexuality. And obviously nothing is confirmed and stuff, but this was something that I was aware of. So it was already a high anxiety space for me, just trying to perform and being in this sexual environment. But I think it did add an element of worry of, okay, could there be an expectation of more type of interactions, just more than me and Miss Ventura? So that was a concern. And then it's just the anxiety now, because I understand that I'm in a room with a mega star, you know, and this is a very high profile person. And it just creates a whole bunch of different elements of if I always worried about if things escalated to something negative, how do I handle it? How do I communicate? How do I go about it? And I was a fan of Mr. Combs, right? So it's just a whole bunch of different elements for me to consider in terms of how to manage the situation. And it all just ended up being an extremely high place of anxiety for me.
And finally, we only have about 20 seconds left here, but your reaction to being called as a witness for the prosecution in all of this?
That was just crazy to me. I didn't think my role in it was significant as it was. So to then, all these years later, being pushed into this scenario on a national stage to kind of decide this man's future and livelihood was just a very, very intimidating, difficult space to be in. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. The pressure and the stress is immense.
I can't imagine, but I appreciate you coming on and telling your story, Sharay. Very insightful, and hope everything turns out well for you. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, wow.